So you can see he's having a little bit of fun with her at this point. So uh, he's so done with her that it doesn't matter. Update 2. Mission accomplished. We had a great drama-free holiday week. I have made it to 2023. I apologize to anyone in advance. I find humor about my condition helps me. I am finding I am being a bit selfish currently. Understandable. All of the participants dispersed yesterday afternoon. I only have a few updates because I am not going to talk about my week with my family. That is for me to cherish. Observations about wayward spouse and this week. I honestly think this is the first time she stepped out. Being with all of us this whole week seems to take a toll on her. It is funny how when you know something, a person's actions make more sense. She was secretive about her phone. She stepped out of our family gathering to, quote, get some air quite a few times. The best was when she, quote, needed to run into town, end quote, and one of the grandkids wanted to go to town also. The gymnastics she did to not take the grandkid. I have to admit that I kind of played with it by asking, why not? So the affair is continuing. With me now retired, and she is asking me about my plans for the day or week. So I go ahead and tell her and then ask her what her plans are. Later this week, I will suggest we meet up for lunch due to me being in the same area as her on our plans. Just to F with her. I guess it was true someone said on another post, unpredictability is the cheater's worst enemy. So you can see he's having a little bit of fun with her at this point. So he's so done with her that it doesn't matter. So we're going to get a little more into the estate pieces of this. This morning I met with my lawyer. I had made decisions and asked him to draw up papers. I replaced my temporary will with my new permanent will that has been signed and should not have to change again. In preparation for all hell breaking loose, I had him draw up divorce papers based on the prenup and the evidence of the affair. She gets nothing but 25% of our shared assets. Think housewares and furniture. I keep all of my liquid assets, retirement funds, and items I purchased with my own wealth. Also, if I push it, she is required to pay alimony. I have signed them in a packet created with all of our evidence of the affair. I am holding this just in case I want to use it. If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel. Okay, so that's the fourth piece of it. It was the will. So he has that will. There's, again, now we got the prenup, we've got the complicated trust, the trust is funded, and now we have the will put in place. So what does the will actually cover? Well, it's covering everything outside of the trust. But very likely, those retirement accounts aren't going via the will anyway. There's a beneficiary designated on it. It would be the same thing as the life insurance. Now, for tax reasons, the beneficiaries might be the kids and grandkids in some kind of proportion. The life insurance could be payable upon death into his trust, so it just gets added to the other assets that are in there. But he has the will as cutting her out in compliance with the prenup that they've signed. And very likely, even though he didn't mention it, that prenuptial agreement is probably referenced in the will. So let's keep going. I sold my loan to the trust. I will allow the trustees to convert it to shares in a Fair Partners company. Speaking of the trust, I have decided how I want it managed. I will drop myself to a 1% trustee. The twins will get majority of the trusteeship. The 4 grandkids will make up the rest. All of the grandkids' proxies will be Sarah and Steve. Okay, so there's quite a bit there. He sold the loan, which was his 25% investment in his wife's affair partner's business. So that trust owns it. He doesn't own it personally. So he got some money in exchange for that. So now the kids and grandkids are going to have step-grandma's affair partner's business loan in their hands. He doesn't go quite into what kind of fallout that may have. But as you'll see when we go along in this story, the kids and the grandkids are going to be very upset with, quote, grandma. And they're not going to like this at all. But now it's going to, all the business interest from that guy is going to be in the trust, which is now going to be controlled by the kids and, to an extent, the grandkids through Sarah and Steve. Again, Sarah was the person he had the twins with, and Steve is her now husband, who he considers a friend. As each grandkid turns 24, the kids' trusteeship will move from Sarah and Steve to the grandkid. If a fraction is left over, Sarah gets the extra share/vote/value. I have planned a meeting with the kids, Sarah and Steve, for next week. I plan on telling them everything then. They have to sign documents, and they will want to know why I am doing this. So when this is done, my personal value will be my liquid assets, personal property, and the money from the AP's loan. So in the worst case scenario, Jane will get very little compared to the assets and value in the trust. In the next couple of weeks, I will disperse the few personal items I want to go to the kids and grandkids. Those are already at a safe location where my lawyer has access. And this is bringing us to the 5th big point. He's transferring this control during life. Now, normally, if this were just gifting stuff, there could be some adverse tax consequences in terms of capital gains and things like that if he's, as opposed to if he passed on and left it to them. But these transfers of authority over a trust where he is still the beneficiary, that's not going to do anything if the trust is drafted correctly. And from what it sounds like with this attorney, they've got it right. So that gifting of stuff during life becomes very, very difficult to undo after death if Jane, the cheating spouse, wants to try to contest the will or contest his actions. It's already in other people's hands and control at that point, so it's a lot more difficult than simply going to the probate court and filing paperwork to contest a will. Some of you commented on my health. Well, if I was not clear, I am not fighting this. I am letting nature take its course. So I have no ill side effects from any treatments. I did notice this week I was more easily tired out. The family noticed also. I played it off as the old man getting older. I still have the cough. The cough is what started it all. It was just my tumors in the lung that led to all of the diagnosis. I just played that as a lingering COVID cough. I expect to go downhill pretty fast once other issues pop up. But by that time, everyone will know. And thank you all for all of your well wishes on that aspect. So, in terms of his own health, he is completely happy and satisfied with what's coming. He's come to peace with that piece of it. What he was actually sounding more nervous about is making sure that his cheating wife got cut out, but he's taken those 5 steps. So let's see, as we get into more updates, how this is turning out. I am planning to spend time with the family. A large trip with all of their different obligations would be tough. That reason is why this week was so important to me, meaning the Christmas week. It was the last time I could be with all of them for an extended amount of time. I am thinking of a small trip for myself. We will see. I do plan on spending a day one-on-one with each child and grandchild. That is my next goal. The letters are not done. Those are very difficult. I will let you all know how the meeting next week goes. Best to you all. Okay, so we've already gotten a couple of updates. He's gotten those 5 points in, and let me reiterate them again. There's the prenup that was put in place before they got married. That's, yes, we're going to keep everything separate. So that really kind of greased the wheels to get everything going the right way for his plan. He's got a complex trust. He's planning. So he's got that complex trust. The third thing is he's got assets that are in that trust. The fourth thing, he's planning to give control and make transfers before he passes on. And he's also updated the will, cutting her off. And he's provided supporting documentation for his decision with his attorney, which includes the affair, evidence, and video, and all that other stuff. I had my lawyer, a notary, the twins, Sarah and Steve, to my farm today. So this is an update. The tasks I needed are done. This process has gone about as well as it could have gone. It is understandable that the family is hurt and angry. When everyone arrived and they saw my lawyer and the notary, the tension in the room was high. I asked them to just sit and listen to me, and after I finish, they are to sign the papers. After signing the documents, I will answer all questions. They all know about the trust. I explained to them it was time for me to release control of the trust to them. I explained how important the trust was in my life, why I started it, how it was outside of my marriage to Jane by mutual decision. I also left instructions on how I wanted them to direct and use the trust. We explained that the trust would be split between the twins and the grandchildren, with Sarah and Steve equal proxy votes for the grandkids until each of them reached the age of 25. He had said 24, but I guess it's when they're older than 24 and they hit 25. That's much more common as 25 over 24. Their trust in me was evident because they signed the documents and got them notarized. After that was done, copies were collated, and I dismissed my lawyer and the notary. I saw them out and thanked them for coming out on a Sunday. They both were gracious as always. All right, so he got right down to business, and he executed a lot of the last of those 5 points. It was the transfer of the control of the trust, which took it out of his hands. He only has a 1% control. He can't do anything without the other trustees, and obviously he trusts the kids and the grandkids through their proxies with Sarah and Steve. So let's see and continue. There's going to be a lot more on the emotional aspect of everything being disclosed. Okay. When I returned to the dining room, acting as a conference room, they were all quiet. My daughter broke the silence with the first question. Well, it was definitely a multi-part question or a stream of consciousness. As soon as she stopped, I started with my health. I explained the fact of my diagnosis. I listened to them making plans on how we are going to fight this. and this is where I stopped them. I explained the odds. I told them I have already had a second opinion. Then I told them what you all already know. I am not going to seek treatment. I am going to let nature take its course. We spent the next hour to an hour and a half arguing. My daughter left the room a few times. Sarah had to go get her. While they were gone, Steve, my son, and I had a heart-to-heart. They understand where I am coming from. They might not agree, but they understand. The consensus is that Sarah and my daughter will come around. After all this calmed down and I knew the next question was coming, when did I find out? And I told them. Remember, this was before the holiday week. And now there was another round of anger and sadness. I explained that I wanted one more holiday week where I was not, quote, a dead man walking. That I was selfish. I wanted this diagnosis to be after the holidays. I don't want it to taint their holidays for the rest of their lives. My daughter, sensing there was still more, went all police detective. She was not going to leave the room until all were out. She asked, how in the hell did Jane not tell her? That is when I dropped the last bomb. I told them exactly the same account of events that I did in my first post. That is the first time I truly saw the fire of anger in my daughter's eyes. I then told them she, to this day, does not know I know. I basically answered the same questions, plots, and etc. that you all suggested, meaning the people on Reddit. So I guess you all prepped me well. In the end, I told them I valued them way more than Jane. For me, I just want to spend the rest of my days in peace, not worrying about Jane. I had to explain my actions during the holiday week. They also pieced together her steps outside for air and the trip into town where she did not want to bring the grandkid. They were worried I did this all alone. I told them I have some social media friends that helped me through the roughest of this time. I refuse to tell them where and how. They can learn later, but I still want this space for myself. So when it came to actually getting support and help, he went to Reddit and had a lot of unbiased advice, at least unbiased in the sense that he put his and laid everything out from his perspective to get some help without creating more family drama. Now the family drama is started after he had his week with his family that he was looking for. I can't say I blame him. You know, with all of that horrible stuff going on and how it's impacting him, having two tragedies at once, the bad diagnosis and finding out about the affair. Look, he's allowed to be as selfish as he wants to be. The emotions were really raw, and we have been talking off and on as a group for a few hours, but I told them I needed to go back and talk about the trust. They understand that the trust will be very helpful in not allowing Jane to obtain my hard-earned wealth, that it protects them, and that is why she is not part of this meeting. With that said, I then needed to share the financials of the trust. I am pretty sure that they all saw the trust as a tax dodge or just a way to protect assets in a marriage where the kids are from another woman. They were not prepared for me to share the finances. As I started to go through the assets and balance sheets, the room just fell silent. There was one question: why did you work so hard all these years when you had this much? So the family really didn't have any idea how much money was collected, accumulated, and protected inside this trust. They assumed, well, he's got some wealth, but they didn't know just how much. But it was to the point where, look, you've got all this. Why did you work so hard? Now, we're going to get into his philosophy here as in part of this update. But a lot of my clients that have wealth like that, they do want to keep doing something. It's kind of that mentality and that attitude is how they accumulated it in the first place. I explained my philosophy of personal finance, something they have heard many times before and take to heart. But I told them that I lived off the trust all of these years. I put them through college with that trust. I made time in my life for them with that trust. And I was able to work for a nonprofit for basically free because of that trust. And if there is any example I want to outlive in them and their children, is to use this trust to do better for others. And not just to write a check for a charity here and there, but to work for something they believe in. In my years with this nonprofit, I have done so much more in training others in building relationships than just writing a check cannot do. And that's very true. And this is something with all of my volunteer experiences and working with others and spending time. I did it because it made a difference, not because it was getting me money. And writing a check just doesn't cut it. If you're not going to get your hands dirty working with a charity or a nonprofit and seeing what it actually does and how it impacts on things, you're kind of just writing a check to make yourself feel better and not actually understand what it's doing. And unfortunately, I've worked with and been a part of some organizations where that's what they do. It's a bunch of people with money that get together and joke and laugh, and then they write checks. And they're not really getting involved with these other charities and groups and seeing the impact that they can make. And I really kind of feel sorry for them on that. I am not happy that today everyone's lives at that table changed in so many ways, good and bad, because of me. It was not the way I wanted it to happen, but it is done. They know all of it. I have begged and pleaded that they just let me deal with Jane, not to talk about the trust with anyone. We will run as status quo for now. When I get sicker, then things will change. They all have agreed. We spent the next few hours making a meal, talking, crying, laughing, and breaking into smaller groups. They all have left about an hour ago, but I expect the twins to come back. I know they will let their spouses in on what is going on. That is just the way they are, and I love my two in-laws' children very much. I knew that last night was my last quiet night. I feel a weight lifted but replaced with another weight of worry. Thank you all for reading. Your thoughts and prayers are so valuable to me. Again, tell your loved ones how you feel and give them a hug. All right, so there are a couple of other updates. I'm going to keep looking at this, but those other updates have absolutely nothing to do with the trust. It was just all family stuff. It was really my reason in going into this is that focus on those 5 things. Look, he got a prenup put in place. And it didn't even have to say anything about her cheating. It was just the fact that he kept his finances separate that he's able to do his estate planning and have his trust not be a part of what she's doing. The second thing is the fact that it is a complex trust with authority and trusteeship, that he was able to control things, but at the same time, it's in a format that's going to get everything and pass it down to the people he wants. And that brings us to another point. It was that the trust was funded. He had assets in the trust that were kept completely separate. It's not in his name, which could end up in probate, which could actually make things more vulnerable. He then also changed his will. So what little he did have in his name was also not to go to the spouse. And he provided that backup documentation And then the transfers during life kind of rounded out that 5. Now, there's also potentially a sixth piece that he may use or wait until he gets sick to use, and that's the divorce piece of it. So, in the grand scheme, taking a look at all of those things, all of that pre-planning to cut out his wife, he didn't even have to divorce her. So, I hope you found that information useful and entertaining. There are a couple of free webinars that kind of go into, for my clients, how they can set things up so that when they leave their wealth to the next generation, it can be protected inside a trust, kind of like the way this gentleman is protecting his wealth for his descendants, and it's not going to end up going to a spouse. It's going to stay with his family. So there's the in-law planning course and the in-law planning webinar that we have. We're going to put links in the description below. So please, if you get an opportunity, go ahead and check that out. It's interesting stuff. And as I always tell my clients, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.